I never thought my son would ban me from his wedding, then send me a bill for 90,000. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. My heart was pounding, fists trembling in disbelief. I had just seen the email. It was bright, stark against the backdrop of my unremarkable day. A bill. For an astronomical amount. My breath hitched in my throat. It felt like a giant claw gripped my chest. My son, my flesh and blood, was telling me he didn't want me there. The brightest moment in his life, and I was no longer welcome. The silence echoed in my empty living room. It's a quiet kind of torture, knowing your own child feels this way. My mind raced back to all the times I held him as a child, wiping tears from his cheeks, each touch now tainted with doubt. My mind struggled with disbelief. How did it come to this? He'd promised it was going to be amazing, a celebration. The sort of thing I had dreamed about while he was growing up. But now? The knot in my stomach tightened. I thought about the boy who used to scramble onto my lap with joy, but now, he had turned his back. Muffled voices played in my head, the whispers of friends. Have you heard? They'd ask, eyes wide with shock. Can you believe he did that? The judgment stung sharper than I anticipated. I felt like an outcast even in my own life. The distance between us grew, a vast canyon I couldn't cross. I wanted to scream and cry and fight for understanding. I desperately wished I could rewind to moments of laughter, the Christmas mornings filled with love. Yet, all that remained were shadows of what once was. And there it was, the final twist. A bill for 90,000. Who does that? I can't even begin to process. Was this forgiveness? Or a final severing of ties? Questions swirled in my mind. Why? What had I done? The tears fell freely now, coursing down my cheeks as I sat alone in that glaring silence. How had I allowed it to come to this? What was left for me now? A lifetime reduced to silence and spite. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days that followed were a blur of heartache and confusion. I found myself staring out the window, watching the leaves sway in the brisk autumn wind, each one cascading downwards like my own will to fight back. The world outside felt vibrant, full of possibilities, while inside my heart, a dull ache nested, spreading like a shadow. Every morning, I'd wake with the same heavy cloud looming over me, replaying the moment that shattered everything. When did parenting become a twisted game of expectations and disappointments? I tried to reflect on the years, searching for where I might have misstepped. Was it the time I pushed him too hard academically? Or maybe it was the heated argument over his decision to pursue art instead of law. But even through those turbulent moments, I never imagined it would culminate in this. One evening, determined to break the spiral of my own despair, I took a walk through the neighborhood. The sunset painted the sky in hues of violet and gold, as if the universe was trying to console me. Yet, I felt utterly alone. As I passed the park, I saw a small child teaching a puppy how to walk on a leash. Their laughter mixed with joyous yelps ignited something inside me. It reminded me of those simple moments when my son was young, running barefoot, laughter spilling out in waves of innocence. That was when I heard a voice behind me. Hey, are you okay? It was a neighbor whom I'd seen countless times but never really talked to. Her name was Lisa, a kind soul who often smiled my way during morning jogs. I hesitated for a moment before breaking my silence. Not really. My son doesn't want me at his wedding. With those words, I felt the release of a tide held back too long. Her eyes softened, and she nodded as if she understood darkness all too well. I'm sorry. That sounds incredibly tough. Sometimes, they need space to realize their own mistakes. You've done your best. Her unexpected kindness stirred something fragmented in me, a small glimmer of hope. We shared a few memories. The tenderness in her voice reminded me that connection could still exist outside my fractured family. As we parted ways, I felt a bit lighter. Despite that flicker, doubt still gnawed at me. The impending wedding loomed in the distance like a dark storm cloud. I refused to imagine my son walking down the aisle without me, but imagining an empty chair at the reception sent chills down my spine. One night, engulfed in an almost suffocating quiet, I decided to go through old photographs. I stumbled upon a snapshot of us at a family reunion, him grinning ear to ear with cake smeared all over his face. The memory brought a smile, brief, but genuine. I found a small box tucked away in a corner. Inside, it contained mementos from his childhood, ticket stubs from amusement parks, tiny awards from school, and even a letter he wrote me in 3rd grade, thanking me for always being there. I clutched that letter tightly, tears pooling again, but this time they were tinged with a sense of resolve. Maybe I could send him a note, perhaps a way to bridge this widening chasm. A message of my love, despite our differences. Reaching for my laptop, my heart raced as I began typing. Each word felt like a fragile offering of peace, a thread to reconnect us. But just as I was about to hit send, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with an unknown number. My hands trembled slightly as I answered it. A voice I had not expected filled my ear, stoking the flames of deep-rooted fear and uncertainty. "Hi, this is Rachel, your son's fiancée. We need to talk." My heart dropped. The weight of her words hung heavily in the air, a palpable dread that something even more unexpected had unfolded. What could she possibly want? My mind raced through countless awful scenarios as I tried to steady my breathing. This could either break the floodgates or rebuild them. I took a shaky breath, fully aware that I was standing at a crossroad. Whether this would lead to healing or further chaos was uncertain, but one truth was crystal clear: I couldn't ignore the call of fate any longer. The chill of Rachel's voice still echoed in my mind long after we hung up. I stared at the screen, my pulse racing like a wild river threatening to overflow its banks. What could she possibly want? The uncertainty filled me with a paralyzing dread, the kind that sits heavy in your stomach and makes it hard to breathe. I had always imagined that a wedding would be a celebration of love, not the backdrop for a confrontation. Morning light began to filter through the curtains, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I stumbled out of bed and poured myself a cup of coffee that tasted bitter against my anguish. Thoughts spiraled in chaotic loops: Rachel, my son, the wedding, and the ultimatum that felt like a guillotine hovering above my every move. Just before I poured the last of the milk into my cup, a small note slipped from the edge of the counter. It read simply, "Don't forget your worth." I recognized my own handwriting from a time before the darkness settled in, and for a fraction of a moment, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. That I made my way to the park where I met Lisa, hoping to find some solace. The path thrummed with life, children laughed while couples strolled hand in hand, a mockery of my shattered world. At first, I thought about turning back, about retreating into the shadows that loomed over me like a suffocating blanket. But I pressed on, seeking refuge in the familiar. As I approached the same bench where I had last spoken to Lisa, there she was again, sitting and reading a book with a faded cover. She looked up, and her face brightened, as if she were the sunlight breaking through gray clouds. "There you are. I was hoping to see you again," she said, patting the seat beside her. I didn't know if I was ready for company, I admitted, the weight of my turmoil pressing heavily on my heart. "You're always welcome here," she said softly. "What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath and recounted my conversation with Rachel, each word feeling more like sandpaper against my soul. Lisa listened attentively, her brow furrowing in sympathy at each revelation. When I finished, I expected her to offer empty platitudes, but instead, she leaned closer, her voice earnest. Maybe Rachel reaching out is a good sign. She may want to ensure the day is filled with love, not animosity. Have you thought about how you might approach the conversation? I haven't even slept since the call, I confessed, my voice cracking slightly. I don't know what to say. Lisa nodded, her expression contemplative. Sometimes, the truth is the most powerful card we can play. Just speak from your heart. You might be surprised at how much of a difference that can make. We sat in silence for a moment, the sun creeping higher in the sky, casting warmth on my skin, and I realized that despite the tumult, a glimmer of clarity was beginning to form. Somehow, amidst the growing chaos, I needed to find the courage to voice what I had buried deep within, my love for my son and my desire to be part of his life again, but just as I felt the steely resolve settling in, a piercing vibration broke through my thoughts. My phone buzzed insistently in my pocket. I pulled it out with trembling hands and stared at the screen, my breath hitching in my throat. It was an email from Rachel titled, "Important Matters Regarding the Wedding." I didn't want to open it, but the dread of anticipation overwhelmed me. "Excuse me," I murmured to Lisa, stepping away from the bench. The world around me faded as I clicked to view the message. My heart dropped with every word I read, weighing heavy in my chest. The email was not just an update, it contained a new reality. I had not prepared for details about the wedding plans, travel arrangements, and a shocking mention of a wedding budget that included expenses to be recouped from the parents. The last line pierced through me like an arrow, "We hope you can contribute, as part of the family." I felt the ground shift beneath my feet as the gravity of her words settled in. The email was a demand, not just emotional, but financial too. I stumbled back toward Lisa, my heart racing, the words of Rachel echoing like a haunting refrain in my mind. Was this truly the way my son wanted a relationship to begin? The mixture of fear and disbelief ignited a fiery pit of anger within me. "I have to go," I said abruptly to Lisa, my voice a mere whisper laced with panic, but just as I turned to leave, I heard Lisa's gentle voice behind me, silky yet firm. "Wait." I paused, the world around me blurring as I felt her presence close the distance. "You're not alone in this. Whatever you decide, remember that your worth doesn't come from your wallet. It comes from your love, your sacrifices, your warmth. Never forget that." Her words wrapped around me like a lifeline but didn't ease the turmoil clattering against my ribs. I could feel the weight of every moment leading to this one, a crescendo of life pulling tighter as I stood on the precipice of an unknown future. With one last look back, I walked away, the world before me swirling with emotions I couldn't fully name. The shadows that threatened to engulf me had become a swirling tempest, and as I faced the door that awaited, I felt a thunder of uncertainty rumble deep inside. How could I confront this new reality? Despair and hope tugged at the edges of my being, and as I stepped into that uncertain future, I knew I was just beginning to emerge from the cocoon of my sorrow, but at the cost of everything I thought I knew. The revelation loomed larger than anything I had experienced before, casting a spell of dread that nothing could alleviate. What lay ahead threatened to tear apart the fragile semblance of my family, and the depths of my heart quivered, as I realized I had not yet faced the fiercest storm. The sun hung high in the sky, pouring warmth over the city, but it felt like a cold void inside me. I walked home with a weight that felt heavier than the very air I breathed. Each step echoed with uncertainty, the dread of impending confrontation aligning itself with my growing anxiety. As I crossed through the threshold of my front door, I found myself in a haven that now felt foreign, void of the comfort and stability it once offered. I dropped my keys onto the table, the sound of metal clattering against wood rattled in the air like a warning bell. My phone buzzed again. I glanced at the screen and saw a message from my best friend, Mark. He had sensed something was off since my last outing, and his concerned note read, "Just checking in. Want to talk?" I hesitated. Mark had always been the voice of reason, but at that moment, I wasn't sure I could articulate the storm swirling within. Instead of responding, I made my way to the kitchen and poured another cup of coffee, hoping the bitter warmth would quell my rising panic. As the coffee splashed into the mug, I noticed the sunlight catching the edges of the chipped porcelain, a reminder of the beautiful chaos life had become. I chewed on my thoughts, anxiously trying to decipher them, feeling as if I were lost in a labyrinth with no way out. A moment later, my son's laughter echoed from the living room. It had been a long time since I heard that sound in our home, and it pierced through my simmering turmoil, reminding me of the joy I used to feel as his father. I cautiously stepped into the living room. There he was, Nathan, sitting on the floor, surrounded by Lego blocks, completely absorbed in building a fortress that towered above him. His concentration was unwavering, a stark contrast to my chaotic mind. "Hey, buddy," I said softly, kneeling beside him. He didn't respond immediately, his tongue poking out in concentration as he balanced a tiny block atop the structure. Then, he looked over at me, those bright eyes shimmering with the innocence of childhood, yet I could see a flicker of something else, a wariness. "Hi, Dad," he said, a hint of hesitation lacing his words. "Are you okay?" His question took me by surprise. "Yeah, just thinking about stuff." He didn't push, and for that, I was grateful. Instead, he returned to his creation, the silence settling comfortably between us, albeit thick with unspoken words. I watched him for a moment, overwhelmed by a wave of affection that fought to break through the walls I had built around my heart. "Can I help you with that?" I offered, reaching for a block. "Sure," Nathan said without much enthusiasm, and I could sense that even at his young age, he felt the undercurrents of tension my chaos created. As we began to work together, I tried to keep my focus solely on him. Each block felt heavy in my hands, physical weight mirroring the emotional burden I carried. We built in silence for a while, but eventually, he ventured into new territory. "Are you coming to my graduation?" he asked, his voice trembling on the edges of hope and uncertainty. "Of course, I wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, forcing more enthusiasm into my voice than I felt. "You know I'm proud of you, right?" He nodded, a flicker of a smile forming before faltering. Will you be okay with Mom being there, too?" The question hung heavy in the air, a question I had grappled with myself. "Yeah. I'll be fine," I lied, knowing the truth was murky and complicated. He shifted slightly, his discomfort evident. "I just want everyone to be happy. It's hard when everyone is fighting." The innocence of his words struck a raw chord deep within me. It was a reminder that my son was caught in the crossfire of conflicts that should never have included him. I ruffled his hair. "You're the most important thing in all of this. No fighting is worth losing you, kiddo." With that, the moment slipped like sand between my fingers. I stood up and walked towards the front window, looking out onto the world outside. The tranquility contrasted sharply with the chaos inside. I felt a storm brewing, not just within me, but in the situation with Rachel, an impending clash that I knew was brewing on the horizon. Suddenly remembering Lisa's words after our meeting, I felt a flicker of determination igniting again. I would not let fear dictate my narrative any longer. But as I turned back to Nathan, committing myself to finding the strength within, the sound of a knock at the door sent spikes of anxiety coursing through me. With slow, cautious steps, I approached the door, my heart thumping wildly. I opened it to find Rachel standing there, her expression unreadable. Behind her, my world blurred, the colors blending into a whirlpool of confusion and dread. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of tension that sent another shiver down my spine. As the door swung fully open, I felt the fragile threads of my reality begin to unravel, leaving me standing at the edge of a cliff, awaiting the collision of our histories. In that moment, the gravity of the upcoming conversation felt crushing. Would I have the courage to confront her demands while protecting my son in the process? Each breath I took felt heavier than the last, the fateful moment upon us, and I was left wondering, would I finally find a way to speak my truth, or would it leave us all shattered? The air felt electric as Rachel stepped over the threshold into a space that had become too small for both of us, the remnants of our love still scattered among the shadows of anger and disappointment. I closed the door behind her, suddenly acutely aware of the distance between us, though both physical and emotional. "Can we sit?" she asked, glancing around as if searching for a familiarity that had vanished along with our composure. I nodded silently and led her to the living room, where Nathan was still immersed in his colorful fortress, blissfully unaware of the unraveling storm. As we settled onto opposite ends of the couch, a silence enveloped us, thick with the weight of unspoken histories. Rachel finally broke it, her voice soft, almost tentative. "I didn't want to intrude. Nathan invited me." Panic shot through me. "Judging by the way he's building, I don't think he's really thought this through," I replied, trying to inject some lightness into the moment, but the words felt hollow. "Perhaps not," she admitted. "But he needs us both there. We can't keep pretending everything is fine, can we?" My heart sank at her words, the truth in them digging deeper than I wanted it to. "Pretending feels easier," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Rachel met my gaze, a mixture of sadness and determination reflected in her eyes. "Now's our chance to show him that we can at least get along." I wanted to scream that no, that wasn't enough. That the love and unity I once hoped for his sake felt like a distant dream, all but extinguished by the bitterness between us. The room felt suddenly stifling as a memory of simpler moments flickered through my mind, where laughter mingled with joy, and I could trust we were a team. But all of it was so far out of reach now. "Why now, Rachel?" I found myself asking before I could think it through. "Why now, when everything feels so fragile?" "Because it's his graduation," she replied sharply, but the tightening of her features softened into something that mirrored my own pain. "And it's time we put aside our differences, at least for him." Before I could respond, Nathan's voice rang through the tension. "Are you two fighting?" His innocence twisted the knife deeper into my heart. I turned to him quickly, forcing a smile that felt far too heavy. "No, buddy. Just talking," I replied, my tone too cheerful. "Okay," he said, his eyes darting to Rachel and back to me, trying to read the atmosphere. "Can I show you what I built?" The hesitance in his voice was palpable, and it tugged at my very soul. "Of course," I said, returning to my knees, the fatherly instinct overpowering my swirling emotions. I looked at Rachel, and for a brief moment, we were a team again, the shadows of the past retreating just enough to let the light through. "That's amazing," I said, genuinely impressed by Nathan's tower, which reached soaring heights, bright blue and yellow blocks facing outward as if standing guard over a kingdom. "You've really outdone yourself, champ." Rachel leaned in, her shoulders loosening as she inspected his creation. "I think it's the best fortress I've ever seen," she said, her voice laced with admiration that unlocked a fleeting moment of connection in our tangled web of parenting. Nathan beamed with pride, unaware that we were walking a tightrope, attempting to balance our shared love for him with the fraying threads of our own relationship. "Thanks, Mom," he said, and I caught the faintest hint of a blush on Rachel's cheeks as she offered him a kind smile. The moment felt like a glimmer of hope, a reminder that perhaps the divisions between us weren't entirely insurmountable. As we basked in Nathan's innocent joy, the gravity of Rachel's visit suddenly lurched back into focus. She looked over at me, hesitating for a moment as if weighing something important on her tongue. "There's something else we need to discuss," she finally said, her voice losing its buoyant tone. "It's about the wedding." The word hung between us like a damning pact. I inhaled sharply, bracing myself. "What about it?" She swallowed. "I received a call from the venue. They said that we need to finalize the payments." "I know things have been rough, but Rachel, I can't afford that," I interrupted, a quick flare of panic igniting. "Not while trying to stay afloat with everything else." "I thought we agreed to make it work," she shot back, her face aflame with determination. I didn't think you'd expect me to carry the entire weight of it. I'm not asking you to do that. My voice shook, the familiar frustration bubbling to the surface. In that moment, Nathan filled the silence with an urgent tremor in his young voice. Why are you guys yelling? You promised you wouldn't fight anymore. His fear ripped through the facade we were desperately trying to uphold. We're sorry, kiddo, I said, my hands trembling as I ruffled Nathan's hair. No more fighting. But deep down, I could feel the fracture widening again. The prayer for a small miracle flickered weakly, almost extinguished by the gravity of our choices. As Rachel turned to Nathan, trying to soothe him, I felt a chill creep back into the room. Can we just talk about it later? I suggested, desperate to quell the oncoming storm, but as Rachel opened her mouth, ready to voice the weight of her expectations, the edges of my heart whispered warnings I was always too slow to heed. I just think she began, but then the phone rang, breaking the tension yet again. I picked it up, and the number shocked me, Lisa, my attorney. My heart sank as dread seeped in. Hello? I answered, the unease pooling in my stomach, knowing she belonged to a world I had tried desperately to distance myself from. Hey, we need to talk, she said, immediate and unyielding. It's about the divorce. As the words echoed in the silence of the living room, I caught Rachel's eye, and suddenly the fortress we had just built seemed so precarious, so much like a house of cards about to topple. My heart raced. Would this be the moment where everything spiraled out of control, revealing truths we could never unsee? What would Nathan think, what would he feel, if this unraveling deemed him a casualty of our war? I closed my eyes, knowing the cliff we were teetering over was steep, and we were only just beginning to fall. The air crackled with tension as I stood frozen, the weight of Lisa's words heavy in my ears. It felt as though the room had shrunk around me, the walls closing in like the grasp of a vice. I glanced over at Nathan, his innocent gaze bouncing between Rachel and me, confusion knitted into his brow. Dad? He asked, the worry in his voice unmanageable. Is everything okay? I forced a smile, but it only deepened the line of concern etched across his face. Yeah, buddy, everything's fine, I lied, the truth swirling chaotically in the depths of my mind. But inside, I was screaming. This call from Lisa wasn't a simple check-in, it was the beginning of yet another struggle, yet another twist in a life that had already delved into chaos. Rachel's eyes narrowed slightly as she caught the glimmer of panic in my eyes. What is it? She asked, her tone shifting from soft concern to steely determination. What does she want? I don't know, I stumbled over the words, attempting to navigate the tumble of emotions threatening to cascade over me. I shifted my focus back to the phone, dreading further interpretation. I need to take this. As I retreated to the kitchen, I could barely make sense of my surroundings. The walls felt like they were closing in, and I gripped the counter like a lifeline, the told openness of the space suddenly feeling anything but welcoming. Listen, Lisa's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts, grounding me momentarily. It's about the assets, and we really need to discuss the settlement numbers. There's a lot riding on this. An avalanche of memories crashed over me, the still images of my life with Rachel flashing violently in my mind, moments of laughter, rage, love, betrayal. How had we arrived here, tangled in a mess of lawyers and court dates when just a few years ago we had dreams wrapped in the gentle glow of hope? I can't do this right now, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I need to focus on Nathan. I understand, but I have to. If you don't respond soon, we risk losing everything, she replied, urgency ringing in her tone. And if Rachel is in a bad financial position too, what do you mean? Panic surged again, a raw wave crashing over me. The implications hung in the air like storm clouds, darkening everything in their path. There are things I uncovered that you should know, Lisa said cautiously, a tremor of empathy grounding her normally assertive demeanor. It's going to affect how the custody negotiations play out. I gripped the phone tighter, biting back the rising tide of dread. Any hint of struggle, any information that threatened my relationship with Nathan felt like a sword dangling above me, ready to drop at any moment. What are you talking about? Rachel has some debts that could complicate negotiations. It might be worth it for you to consider what it means for custody and the financial obligations stop. I interrupted, my heart pounding so loudly I feared Nathan could hear it from the living room. I can't think about this right now. Then when can you? Lisa pressed, pushing me deeper into a corner. You cannot avoid it forever. As I hung up, the silence in the kitchen seemed deafening, echoing with the uncertainty and the fractures that lay heavy in my heart. I stood for a moment, staring at the ground, gripping the counter as if I could ground myself through its cold edge. How could I possibly focus on what came next when life was unraveling in ways I couldn't yet comprehend? Taking a deep breath, I re-entered the living room, where Rachel was still trying to soothe Nathan. Everything's going to be okay, she was saying, though her voice sounded strained. There's something I need to tell you, I said, feeling the weight of my own unresolved turmoil threatening my composure. Rachel turned to me, her expression a mix of hope and apprehension. Her determination brought forth the cracks in my resolve, a reminder that this conversation was about more than just us. What is it? It's about the call I just had. I need to know how we will manage everything moving forward. Lisa mentioned your debts. And custody stuff, and my voice trembled, nearly betraying me. I never wanted it to come to this. Rachel's features hardened, the soft lines of her determination fraying into something sharper. I didn't think we were going there yet. We were supposed to talk about the graduation and Rachel, I interrupted, frustration bubbling in my throat like molten lava. We need to face our reality right now. Nathan's eyes flickered between us, the storm building in his innocent mind as we stood on the precipice of a cliff that felt all too real. Maybe we shouldn't talk about that now. It's my day, he protested. In that instant, more than anything, I wanted to reach out and wrap my arms around my son, to shield him from the tangled mess we had become. But instead, Rachel and I stood like two colossal mountains, the chasm between us wide and unbridged. Maybe you're right, Rachel said, looking away, her voice cool in the wake of our fire. The moment felt like someone had turned off a light, the warmth that lingered just moments before had extinguished. Just as the quiet fell between us again, my phone buzzed violently on the table. The name flashing across the screen struck like a bolt of chaos. My stomach dropped. My mother was calling, and I could feel the dread squeeze tighter. I let it ring, unwilling to confront yet another storm brewing from the past. Are you going to get that? Rachel prodded, her tone probing beneath her own frustration. No. I couldn't bear to invite another complication into the brewing tempest. Let us focus on Nathan. But even as I said it, I could feel our chances slipping away, like grains of sand between my fingers while I grasped desperately for control over a life built on illusions of strength. The clock was ticking, and another wave of reality was looming over us, more potent than any storm we had ever faced together. Before I could gather the thoughts to continue, Nathan's small hands tugged at my sleeve, pulling me down to meet his level. Dad, it's okay if you're scared, he whispered solemnly. You and Mom always know what to do. It was the sweetest reassurance liberally dusted with innocence. And yet, it cut deeper than I anticipated. Thanks, buddy, I managed, leaning in to breathe the childlike faith he carried unburdened by the complications of the adult world. But as I pulled back, a revelation hit me, sharper than any glass, a realization that whispered sinister possibilities. What if we were failing him in a way that his young heart would never comprehend? Rachel's gaze flicked to me, intense and sharp. What do we do now? She finally asked, her voice quaking slightly against the backdrop of growing uncertainties. The answer hovered between us, unspoken and heavy with dread, aching to be acknowledged even as the shadows of impending division unfurled in the corners of our fragile reunion. But just as I prepared to speak, Nathan's expression shifted dramatically. His eyes widened, as if in the throes of sudden recognition, and I knew in the depths of my bones what he might say next could shatter the brittle accord we had momentarily grasped. I don't want you two to not be together for my wedding, he blurted, his voice rising with a palpable twist of panic. You're not going to fight forever, are you? The air fell still, slicing through the fragile threads of hope, and as Rachel's gaze met mine, I swallowed hard. The gravity of Nathan's fear pressed in on me, the realization that the weight of our choices was far more unbearable than I could have imagined. And in that moment of piercing clarity, I understood we were more than parents, we were two hearts bound in a storm, struggling for survival as the waves crashed down around us, desperate to find our way to shore amid the chaos. But as both our fears crossed the threshold of our son's heart, the future felt more tenuous with each passing second, and uncertainty loomed like the heavy fog. What choice would we make next? How many more fractures would Nathan have to bear before he understood the true cost of our divided lives? I closed my eyes and braced for the tumult ahead. The path was only beginning to uncoil, and with it, a haunting realization lingered: we may stumble before we could ever find our footing. The light outside was beginning to dim, casting long shadows across the room like tendrils of despair. Nathan's innocent declaration hung in the air, a fragile plea that pulled at my heart in ways I never expected. The notion that our discord could bleed into his future was more than a splinter in my conscience, it was a gaping wound. I started, but words failed me. Instead, I knelt beside him, my hands resting on his small shoulders. Buddy, we're not. We're just trying to figure things out. Rachel stepped back, scrubbing her hand across her eyes. Her breathing was unsteady, and I could see a tempest raging within her, a melange of hurt and fear mirrored in her expression. Nathan, sweetheart, she said gently, her voice wavering, you have to choose. We will always love you. Yeah, that's true, I added, wishing desperately that I could weave together our fractured family with mere words. You don't have to worry about the future. We're just lost for now. But even as I spoke, doubt whispered through me. Lost felt too gentle a word, it felt like a slow drift into a dark, uncharted sea, one where we could easily lose sight of each other. The boy wrinkled his nose as if sensing the volition of discontent swirling around us. Then why can't you just be together? Like before? He asked, his honesty slicing through the tension like a knife. You promised I'd get to see you together again. Sometimes things change, Rachel managed, her voice thick with the weight of unspoken grief. And that's really tough to deal with. Nathan's gaze darted between us, and I could feel the ache in his heart, pure and heavy. So, are we not a family anymore? He whispered. It struck me then, the profound vulnerability in that question, how even at his young age, he carried the enormity of our choices on his small shoulders. No, of course we're still a family, I said hastily, just, not in the same way. His eyes glistened with the threat of tears. But I don't understand. Can't you try harder? You both used to make it work. My heart twisted painfully. I wanted to shake away the burdens, to reach back into the past when laughter echoed freely in our home, when love felt like a fortress rather than a battlefield. We will work on it, I promised, the lie resting uneasily on my tongue. As Nathan's lips curled into a slight frown, Rachel turned away, squeezing her eyes shut as if bracing for impact. I knew I had to reach her, to bridge the gap that lay between our hurt. Yet as I opened my mouth to speak, my phone buzzed violently again. It was the same name as before, my mother, a reminder of another storm brewing in the distance. I'll be right back. I just need to stop ignoring her. Rachel snapped suddenly, spinning around, her demeanor as tense as a drawn bowstring. Her emotions were fraying at the edges. All of this is falling apart, and you're just going to keep your back turned? Rachel, that's not fair, I said, my voice thick with the remnants of anxiety that threatened to combust within me. Then what is fair? She shot back, her expression hard. Ignoring the mess isn't going to fix it, it's just going to make it worse. I stood there, heart racing, feeling as if each of her words struck like arrows aimed directly at my vulnerability. Nathan held my hand tightly, its warmth comforting, yet leaving me feeling painfully hollow. can you guys stop fighting? He pleaded, his voice cracking. I knelt down, forcing a gentle smile for Nathan, but I felt like a ghost caught between two worlds, one that begged for connection and another that felt irrevocably lost. We're not fighting, buddy. We're just trying to understand each other. No. You've been fighting for weeks. He protested, desperation breaking through the softness of his voice. Why can't you just love each other again? In that moment, clarity struck. Nathan was calling for us to break free from the turmoil we had wrapped him in, to be the parents we once were, even if we weren't together. The walls closed in tighter around me. It was all I wanted, to shield him from this burden. But the truth was, I could feel the insidious grip of despair tightening its hold. We try, kiddo, I murmured, feeling helpless. We need to be honest, Rachel said, an edge to her voice that I knew all too well. We can't go on pretending everything is okay when it's not. With a heavy sigh, I shifted my focus to her. What if Nathan is our reason to try? What if we could work together for him? I don't know if that's enough anymore, she confessed, the crack in her voice threatening to turn into a storm. There's so much hurt. Then let us find a way to heal together. My tone was softer now, yearning for the possibility that maybe we could traverse this fog together. But before she could reply, Nathan's small voice piped up again, filled with heartbreak. If you love each other, you can get through anything, right, Dad? Of course, buddy, I said, my heart clenching, wishing fervently that it was that simple. Love is strong. Yet, even as I spoke, shadows loomed larger, and I could feel the cracks forming in the foundation of what was left of us. I closed my eyes briefly, taking a sharp breath, only to open them and sink into Rachel's gaze, searching for a flicker of hope, but hope was eclipsed as my phone vibrated angrily once more, now tearing at the fraying threads holding us together. My mother again. Her calls had been less frequent since the fallout, each hesitant ring a reminder of unspoken burdens. Enough! Rachel exclaimed, frustration igniting like a flare in the dim room. We can't ignore this any longer, can we? As my resolve faltered, I picked up the phone, inner turmoil boiling just beneath the surface. What do you want, Mom? I said, my voice a tightrope, balancing desperation and a lingering hope. Please, just listen, she said, her voice quivering. There's something you need to know. It's about your father, it's urgent. The weight of her words hung in the silence, a thunderclap igniting my senses. Mom, what is it? I demanded, my heart pummeling against my ribs. I'm coming over, she said, and in her tone, I sensed a shadow of something gaping and raw. But you're going to need to prepare yourself. The anticipatory dread settled like an anchor in my stomach, churning surges of chaos I'd long tried to contain. I exchanged a frantic glance with Rachel. The impact of my mother's words foreshadowed the storm soon to arrive, one I feared could rip apart whatever little bonds we were still struggling to hold as family, and as Nathan tugged at my sleeve once more, uncertainty coiling around us, all the chasm between us felt wider than ever, deepening with each passing heartbeat. I wondered with rising panic just what truths were lurking in the wings, and whether we could rise together, or if the tides of our past would finally sweep us away. The air grew thick with suspense, a heavy cloud overshadowing the small glimmer of hope I had tried to cultivate. It lingered like an unshed tear, and I felt its familiar weight settle in my chest. I glanced at Nathan, who stood between us, his small frame a fragile barrier against the impending storm. Dad, what's wrong? He asked, his innocent eyes alert, sensing the change in the atmosphere. Nothing, buddy, I said, but the lie felt sticky on my tongue. Words reverberated around the room, echoing realities I couldn't yet articulate. I watched as Rachel's face mirrored my anguish, the lines around her mouth etched deeper as emotions twisted around us. There's something we need to talk about, I said, bracing myself for the inevitable truth that had been lurking, waiting to strike. I might have to deal with some family matters. Is it about your dad? Nathan's brow furrowed as he stepped closer, cocooned in the innocence of childhood while danger swirled around him. Rachel nodded, her silence speaking volumes. She knew what my family had cost us, and yet here we were, on the precipice of another revelation that threatened to peel back the veneer of stability we had fought so hard to maintain. "You need to take care of it," she said softly. "You can't keep running from it." "I know," I replied, swallowing hard as anxiety clawed at my throat. "But it's complicated. It's more than just family drama. What could be more important than us?" Nathan's tiny fists balled up at his sides, his frustration evident, a child's confusion morphing into something deeper. I felt my heart wrench at the bare honesty in his voice, as desperate as a lighthouse beacon on a dark night. "You're right, Nathan. But sometimes, adults have to face things that we can't make sense of at first. Will it make this all better?" His voice wavered, a strand of hope entangled amidst the uncertainty. "If you just fix whatever it is with your dad?" Rachel lowered herself to Nathan's level, cradling his chin gently in her hand. "Honey, sometimes things don't get fixed as easily as we want. But we can try together, yes?" "For you," Nathan said, his innocence glowing, "I'll always try." There it was, the painful reminder of our duty. Love wasn't a simple patch we could mend. It was messy, complicated, a tapestry frayed at the edges and yet striving to hold together despite all odds. Before I could respond, the phone slipped from my hand and crashed to the ground, screen lighting up with my mother's name, a beacon of the past that felt more like a curse. The sound reverberated through the room, a ghost encountering the living. I began, reaching for the phone, searching for a way to escape the noise that echoed in my mind, where the past merged with the present, each moment colliding like waves crashing against jagged rocks. "Stop!" cried Rachel, her voice a visceral response. "We need to address this. You can't run forever." Nathan glanced back and forth between us, his distress a palpable weight in the air. "I don't like this yelling," he whispered, tears threatening to spill. It echoed as our shared reality, a churning tide rising to the brink. With a trembling breath, I knelt down, drawing Nathan into my arms. "I'm so sorry, buddy. We're just trying to figure everything out. But your mom's right. There are parts of our lives that I need to confront." He nestled closer, small and fragile, lost in a world he shouldn't have to navigate. "I just want us to be strong again." His words struck me hard. We both knew strength had been eclipsed by shadows. As I tilted my head, a half-formed apology on my lips, the doorbell rang. The sound sliced through the tension, sharp and unwelcome. A chill raced down my spine, sending icy shivers into the depths of my uncertainty. "That can't be your mom, can it?" Rachel asked, her brow furrowed. "I don't know," I admitted, fear creeping in like a thief in the night. I wasn't prepared for a visit. "What if it's—" She faded off, her voice brittle, uncertainty wrapping around her thoughts. "I'll check," I said, forcing a smile for Nathan, pulling him back up to his feet. "Stay here." But as I approached the door, I felt the weight of expectations looming just as heavily as the consequences of what lay on the other side. My heart raced as I opened it, revealing not my mother but someone I hadn't expected, a figure from the past, draped in sunshine but casting a long shadow. "Hello, Nathan," said Amanda, my sister's voice wrapping around me like a familiar blanket, but there was a tumult in her gaze. "We need to talk." My shock caught in my throat as the reality sank in. Amanda hadn't spoken to me in years, a rift carved by the same pain that permeated our family. Her arrival was like a tempest contained behind thin glass, but before I could catch my breath, she leveled her gaze at me, a kaleidoscope of emotions swirling just beneath the surface. "It's about Dad. You won't believe what's happening." The room froze around me, the air heavy with anticipation and unrelenting fear. I glanced back to see Nathan, still rooted in the spot where I'd left him, confused and innocent. Hope flickered uncertainly beside dread, the past and future colliding in a turbulent whirl, and as Amanda stepped into my house, that small flicker of comfort slipped, leaving me enveloped in shadow, caught in a storm that promised to unravel the delicate fabric of what little was left of our family. The moment Amanda walked through the door, the atmosphere shifted. Nathan's innocent gaze flitted between us as confusion deepened in the lines of his small face. My heart pounded, a deafening counterpoint to the quiet we had been trying to establish, the safety we had attempted to cultivate in our fractured lives. "What do you mean, what's happening with Dad?" I asked, my voice steadying on the knife edge of disbelief. Amanda took a deep breath, her posture taut, emotions flickering behind her honey-brown eyes. He's not well, Jack. It's serious." "What do you mean? What's wrong?" I could feel Rachel behind me, her presence a source of quiet strength, her fingers gently brushing against my back, grounding me as the ground beneath began to tremble. "There's something we need to discuss regarding his treatment," Amanda continued, her voice lowered to a conspiratorial whisper, though in a family like ours, whispers often felt like bombs in waiting. "He needs help, and it seems, well, let's just say he has some debts to settle." "Debts?" The weight of her words slammed into me as I recalled the broken remnants of our family history, gatherings filled with polite avoidance, the dangers of alcohol, and the dark, just below the surface tensions. "What does this have to do with me?" My throat constricted around the enormity of what she was proposing. The years that had distanced us felt like shadows, each one long and haunting. "Because it's going to take all of us," she admitted, her voice cracking, vulnerability slipping through her stoic facade. "He's asking for you. You're the only one who can make him listen." "Why would I? He's treated me like a stranger for most of my life," I shot back, bitterness branding my words. "You're asking me to see a man who abandoned us when we needed him the most." "I know, Jack. I know. But he's still our father. We might owe him at the very least an opportunity to try." Her eyes glistened, and I felt a familiar, unwelcome swell in my chest, a mixture of compassion and anger, pinned beneath layers of hurt. As silence filled the room, Nathan's small voice broke through. "Mom, what's happening? Are we going to fix things with Grandpa?" His wide, trusting eyes were fixed on us, and my heart twisted. In that moment, I realized the depth of his hope, the simple, heart-wrenching belief that family can be salvaged without fully comprehending the wreckage within. "No, Nathan," Rachel said gently, kneeling beside him. "Not right now." Tension hung thick in the air as Amanda's gaze met mine, and in that shared moment, I felt the ghosts of our past circle around us, whispering doubts and hurt that had long ago buried themselves deep. "You need to confront this, Jack. And if not for you, then for Nathan." That struck deeper than I could have predicted. The thought of Nathan having to grapple with the tangled branches of our family's history was unbearable. I had promised him strength, a safe haven, and yet here I stood, on the verge of falling apart. "All right," I relented, the word tasting bitter. "But I don't know how to start. I can't just erase the years of hurt." "I'll be with you," Amanda replied. "We can face him together." Hope flickered weakly amidst the shadows, a single candle fighting against the dark. Yet just as soon as I felt the warmth lace through, a new dread settled heavy on my chest. "What about Mom?" I whispered, the specter of her pain intertwining with the complexities of this family's drama. "She left," Amanda answered quietly, her honesty carrying the weight of secrets we had all been too afraid to confront. "She's with someone else. Your father doesn't even know." Silence encased us, thick and suffocating. Our mother, the woman who had once been a pillar of strength, later a distant memory, had chosen to walk away. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, the room spinning with revelations that only deepened the rift between us. "And what happens when Nathan asks about all of this?" I asked defensively, glancing down at my son, the innocent bystander in a world of grown-up mistakes. "We'll handle it when the time comes," Rachel intervened, her voice strong yet laced with uncertainty. Just then, a loud thud reverberated from the back of the house, a loud crash that interrupted the swirling storm of emotion surrounding us. Caught off guard, I turned toward the sound, terror creeping through my veins like a coiled serpent. "What was that?" Amanda asked. "I don't know," I said, feeling a twist of dread settle in the pit of my stomach. "I'll check." As I slowly moved toward the back hallway, dread and anticipation coiled within me, intertwining with the unresolved heaviness in my heart. I reached for the door, pushing it open, the darkness beyond leading to uncertainty, a dark shroud wrapped around the corners where light could not penetrate, but instead of the mundane mess of daily life, waiting behind the door was something else, something that pulled me back in time and space with a startling force. The floor was littered with scattered papers, and in that swirling chaos, my father's name echoed through my mind while a singular letter lay face up, seemingly waiting just for me. I bent down, fingers trembling as I touched its edge, the return address as familiar as the chaos surrounding it, and within the confines of that fragile paper, the ghost of a past that refused to stay buried had found its voice again, and just like that, the surfacing of memories and the ramifications of my father's choices rippled out, creating waves that could drown us all. The room, heavy with tension, felt as though it was about to implode around us, and yet all I could focus on was the letter in my hand, the symbol of unresolved history and an answer that could shape the very fabric of the life I was fighting to rebuild. "Nathan, stay close," I instructed, hoping the grip of parental instinct would steady my shaking hands and guide me through this. I tore the envelope open, my heart racing with a mixture of dread and hope. The words within swam before my eyes, demanding to be seen, demanding recognition of the truth that lay so deeply buried. "It's from Dad," I muttered, barely processing the weight of my own voice. A glance at Nathan's curious face tightened my chest, his innocence stark against the chaos that had so long entwined our lives. "What does it say?" he asked, a child's hopeful inquiry delivered with a fragile tremor. I hesitated, far too aware that truths had been discarded like broken promises, questions wrapped in mistrust, and the weight of choices I'd made. "It's complicated," I admitted, steeling myself against the storm ready to break loose. I began to read, my voice shaking as I spoke the unfamiliar words aloud. "Dear Jack, if you're reading this, then I must have taken my last breath in this world." My father's words poured from the page, dripping with a raw vulnerability unseen for years. The confession that followed revealed a myriad of regrets, nights of drunken despair, moments of clarity lost to time, and buried truths that had festered between us all, a gaping wound of what we could not or would not discuss. Each line painted a portrait of pain, of a father struggling with demons that had chained him down in regret. He spoke of love, mistakes, and the hope for reconciliation. "I've wronged you," he admitted unflinchingly, "but the most painful legacy would be for us to continue this cycle of hurt." As I read, I could feel the air shift, a tangible tension cradling the delicate hopes that had been lodged in Nathan's heart. Behind my father's words lay a desperate plea for forgiveness, not just for himself but for our entire family. It was a crumpled tapestry fraying at the seams, a truth waiting to be unveiled, fragile yet fierce in its ability to ignite hope amid the wreckage. Words flooded my mind, the enormity of it all crashing together, demanding attention: hope, fear, uncertainty, and love. I looked back to Rachel, whose brow furrowed in understanding and concern as she leaned closer, catching fragments of the revelations deepening around us. Our eyes met, and in that shared moment I grasped that what was before me was not just a letter from a father to a son, it was a bridge, an opportunity to reach across the chasm, to break down walls we had both fortified with our own bitterness and fears. I glanced at Nathan again, still rooted to the floor as he watched us, a beacon of innocence and love. "Sometimes we have to confront the past to protect the future," I said slowly, as an understanding threaded through my voice. "This changes everything." "What does?" Nathan asked, bewilderment shadowing his bright eyes. "Your grandpa is asking for a chance, buddy," I whispered, struggling to manage the wave of emotions washing over me. "He wants to try and make things right with us." My voice cracked, revealing how daunting the path ahead would be, but how much I wanted to attempt it for Nathan's sake. "But he hurt us," Nathan protested, confusion written all over his face. "I know. I've hurt you in my own way too." I turned back to Rachel, whose eyes reflected concern yet bore a hint of understanding. We all have, haven't we? Rachel nodded slowly, the unyielding bond of shared experience swirling around us like ethereal smoke. This was our opportunity, a chance to carve out a new legacy of hope, forgiveness, and healing amidst a backdrop of tumultuous histories. The shadows might fade, but the remnants of light flickered bright, urging us to consider possibility that I lowered the letter, taking a tentative step toward Nathan, who stood at the heart of our fractured family. Everyone makes mistakes, buddy. It's part of being human. But it's also about how we choose to move forward. The silence in the room stretched, thick and suffocating, but as Nathan processed my words, a flicker of understanding crossed his face. Can we try? He asked, purple-hued sincerity glowing like dawn breaking through a night marred by storms. Can we really try together? I blinked, feeling the enormity of that question punch the air from my lungs. I want to. But it's going to take all of us. The barrenness of the chasm between Rachel and me, the remnants of my past coalescing into palpable grief, formed a chorus that could either weaken or strengthen our resolve. As Amanda looked on, I could sense the collective heartbeat of our family surging. Would we choose to embrace the light amid the shadows, or would we allow the legacy of hurt to continue unaddressed? The choice lay before us, and I felt the stirring of courage collecting in my chest. Yes, Rachel finally breathed, her voice that of faraway thunder rumbling softly. We need to try. Together, we turned to Nathan, our eyes pooling with the conviction of unspoken bonds reforming. Holding his small hands, I felt an extraordinary sense of unity blossom, one that defied time, tradition, and pain. Okay, I can do this, Nathan said bravely, visibly resolving to grow into love and understanding, no longer tethered solely to the past. I want to meet my grandpa. The understanding hung in the air, fierce yet beautiful. Our family was changing direction, not only because of the past we carried but also because of the future we wished to create. And with that, a warmth bloomed against the coolness of uncertainty. However difficult, however terrifying, together we would face what was ahead, confronting the tangled roots of our histories, and finding the paths forward, guided by the flicker of hope igniting in our hearts. As I stood there, enveloped by the warmth of my son's love and the newly kindled glimmer of acceptance in Rachel's eyes, I was struck by a realization: healing may be slow, but it was never too late to start anew. And as the sun broke through the clouds outside, casting light across our fragile moment, I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of belonging return to my being. Together, I murmured, the word echoing in my soul, we'll find our way home.